They kept calling me his former wife while my wedding ring was still warm on my finger. The first time I heard it, the office lights were too bright, hard white squares shining down on everything. I stood there clutching a warm paper bag to my chest. The smell of braised pork and steamed rice curling up into the sharp scent of toner and old coffee. My heart was light then, silly almost, beating with the small excitement of a wife who thinks she is about to do something sweet for her husband. The receptionist looked up from her screen and froze. Her hand hovered over the keyboard, her smile folding in on itself. I saw her eyes drift to my left hand, to the thin gold band that had lived there for years, then to a framed photo near her mouse. In that photo my husband was laughing at some office celebration, his tie slightly crooked, dimples showing. Beside him stood a woman I did not know, leaning into him as if she belonged in that space, as if that space had been saved for her and not for me. The receptionist breathed my name out slowly, like it tasted strange in her mouth. Then she said it. I did not know you still came around. Still came around. The words did not land right. I smiled anyway, the way a polite stranger smiles to cover confusion. My fingers tightened around the soft paper of the lunch bag. I told myself I had misheard her. That happens sometimes in noisy rooms. I told her I had brought my husband his lunch, because he forgot it at home. My voice came out gentle, almost cheerful. I did not mention how I had stood in our small kitchen that morning, carefully packing his favorite food, feeling proud of the man he was trying to be. She glanced around nervously, as if afraid someone might overhear. Then she cleared her throat and said she would let him know his former wife was here. The world narrowed to those two small words. Former wife. For a moment I thought I had misheard again. My heart gave a strange little stutter, like it had tripped over something invisible. I felt the warmth of the paper bag burn against my palms, my grip so tight the edge crinkled. I asked her to repeat herself. My voice did not sound like my own. Her face went pale. Her eyes dropped to her keyboard, then back to me, skittering away like they were afraid of what they might find if they looked too closely. She corrected herself clumsily, said she had misspoken, that she would call him right away. But that word had already settled inside me, sharp and wrong and heavy. Former. Behind me the office hummed. Phones rang. Someone laughed in a far corner. Papers shuffled. The copier clicked and sighed. Every sound seemed too ordinary, too normal for what I had just heard. I stood there in my best light blue dress, the one he used to say made my eyes look calm, holding lunch for a man who apparently no longer had a wife in this building. In that moment something small and fragile inside me lifted its head. Not quite fear, not quite anger, more like a thin crack running across glass, the kind you only see when the light hits just right. I told myself it was a mistake. People say the wrong thing all the time. Get confused. Mix up details. Offices are full of gossip and half-stories. I told myself all of that, standing there under the harsh white lights. But deep in my chest, beneath the polite smile and steady breathing, a quiet voice whispered that this was not the first strange thing I had noticed. It was simply the first one I could not ignore. Before everything twisted, my life felt steady in the way quiet routines often do. Not perfect, not without its worn edges, but familiar, warm, and built with the kind of small comforts that make a marriage feel like a soft place to land. Most mornings began with the gentle sputter of the kettle coming to life on the stove. The steam would rise and curl into the cool air of our kitchen, brushing lightly against the window where sunlight filtered in soft and golden. Our basil plant leaned toward it every day, eager and reaching, its leaves always faintly fragrant when I brushed a hand across them. I used to wake before my husband. I liked that quiet moment in the morning when the world had not quite settled into its noise yet. I would walk barefoot across the tile, the floor cool against my skin, and start brewing our coffee. Strong, dark, touched with condensed milk, just the way he said, reminded him of something warm and familiar from his childhood. He would wander in eventually, still sleepy, his hair tousled and his shirt half-buttoned. He always paused near the doorway for a moment, as if savoring the smell before stepping into the room. Then he would give me a soft good morning and kiss the top of my head, his lips barely brushing my hair. "Smells like home," he would murmur. And I would smile, because that was all I ever wanted our life to feel like. He had always been the kind of man who chased ambition the way some men chase storms. When he earned his promotion last year, he stood a little straighter, his eyes brighter with the kind of pride that came from feeling seen. I held him through those long nights of preparation, massaged the tension from his shoulders, Brushed off the exhaustion in his voice when he said the work would be worth it. But with the promotion came changes I pretended not to notice. He stayed later. He forgot little things he used to remember. He grew quiet in the evenings. Not unkind. Just distant. In a way that felt like he was carried away by some invisible current. There were nights when he came through the door, smelling faintly of someone else's perfume. The trace so light it could have been the office air, or the crowded lift, or nothing at all. I told myself it was nothing. That he was loyal. That stress clings to people in strange ways. There were weekends when he said he needed to catch up on work. I believed him. I encouraged him. I wanted him to shine in the world he had worked so hard to enter. Still, there were moments when something felt strange. Small things. Subtle shifts. Like the way he changed his phone password without mentioning it. Or how he started leaving the room to take certain calls. Or how he would smile when he read a message, then tuck the phone away quickly as if the warmth on his face needed hiding. I noticed all of it. And I chose to trust him anyway. Because that is what you do when you believe in the person you married. You give grace. You give the benefit of the doubt. You give your heart space to rest instead of panic. Our home was simple but full of softness. The throw blanket draped over our couch, worn at the corners from years of use. The framed photo of our honeymoon on the shelf. The mismatched mugs he insisted we keep even though I wanted matching ones. The faint sound of our neighbor's radio through the wall at night. These things painted the backdrop of a life I believed was solid. He would come home, drop his keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, and wrap his arms around me, as if the world outside had been too harsh and I was the only place he could breathe easily. His cheek would rest against my hair, his breath warm, his arms sure. I never imagined those arms held a second version of him too. We spent our evenings sharing stories. Even if they were small, I would tell him about a new project I was designing. And he would tell me about meetings I did not fully understand but listened to anyway. His voice always softened when he spoke to me at home. As if this was the version of him he trusted the most. There were times we talked about our future, in quiet whispers under dim light. The idea of becoming parents someday. The tiny balcony garden he wanted to expand. The places he wished to travel with me when work slowed down. Dreams said softly, almost shyly. As if speaking them too loudly might make them vanish. He made me believe we were still building something together, and I carried that belief with tender hands. Looking back, I see the cracks now. Not glaring or loud, just the faint kind that form beneath the surface, unnoticed until too many gather in the same place. He stopped holding my gaze as often. He started wearing a cologne I had never seen in our bathroom cabinet. He grew impatient over small things he once found endearing. He forgot the date of our anniversary until I reminded him. He brushed off my concerns with a tired smile. I told myself it was stress, pressure, ambition weighing heavy on his shoulders. I told myself marriages survive seasons like this, that love bends through them. But somewhere along the way, he began bending toward a different life, one where I was not invited. Our home still held warmth, but there were corners growing cold without me noticing. Places he no longer shared with me, thoughts he carried alone, secrets too heavy for my heart to understand. On the morning I brought him lunch, everything felt normal. He ate quietly, thanked me for the meal, told me he had a big presentation that day. He wore the tie I straightened for him, the same one I had given him years before. When he left, he kissed my forehead, just like always. And I stood by the door watching him go, never suspecting that he was walking into a version of his life where I did not exist. Not as his partner, not as his wife, not even as a memory he honored. If anything, he had rewritten himself. A man with no ring, no home waiting for him, no woman who loved him and believed in him. A man free. I did not know it then, but the second I stepped into that office, carrying warmth and love in a paper bag, the truth began to shift under my feet. There is always a moment, small and almost forgettable, when something inside you notices a shift long before your mind is willing to name it. For me, that moment came one quiet evening when the sky outside our window glowed soft and pink, the kind of sunset that usually made me pause and admire it. But that day, I did not look at the sky. I was looking at him. He stood in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, his body angled away from me just slightly. His shoulders were tense, one hand gripping the counter's edge. The call was not long. It was not loud. But when he hung up, he did not meet my eyes. He tucked his phone into his pocket as if hiding something small but delicate, something not meant for me to see. I asked who had called. He said it was work. He did not look up when he said it. His voice was steady, but the air felt different. He walked past me to the living room and sank into the couch with a sigh that sounded practiced rather than tired. I watched him for a long moment. The tension in his jaw, the flicker in his eyes that came and went too quickly. Something quiet inside me shifted then, the faintest whisper of caution. But I pushed it away gently, telling myself marriage required trust more than suspicion. Another clue surfaced on a Sunday morning. One of those gentle mornings when the world feels slower, safer. He had stepped into the shower, and while tidying up, I noticed his work jacket hanging over the back of a chair. I reached to straighten it, smoothing the fabric. That was when I saw it. A lipstick smudge near the collar. Faint, pale, easy to miss. But not mine. The color did not match any shade I owned. It was soft rose, slightly glossy. Something inside my chest tightened. My first instinct was to explain it away. Offices were crowded. People stood close in meetings. Maybe someone brushed past him. Maybe it meant nothing at all. I held the jacket closer and inhaled. Beneath the familiar scent of his cologne lingered something floral, like jasmine mixed with a sweetness I could not place. A scent that did not belong in our home. The shower stopped. His footsteps grew closer. I lowered the jacket quickly, hiding the collar between the folds. Tucking the worry deep into a corner of my mind I was not ready to open. He entered the room, towel around his shoulders, hair damp, eyes warm as he leaned in to kiss my cheek. The scent of the unknown perfume ghosted between us for a second before fading. I said nothing. Another shift came when he started dressing differently. Not dramatically. Not enough for most people to notice. But I noticed. The new shirts. The little extra care he took with his hair. The new cologne that appeared suddenly one day on our dresser. A sleek bottle I had never seen before. When I asked about it, he said he wanted to try something new. His voice was casual, but his eyes slid away. Then there were the messages. The ones he answered too quickly. The ones that made him smile softly before he locked his phone and placed it face down on the table. I asked who he was chatting with. He said it was a group discussion about office deadlines. Another explanation that felt too neat, too polished. One evening, I walked into the room just as he finished texting. The look on his face when he saw me made something inside me flutter with unease. His smile was too quick, his phone too carefully placed out of reach. He asked if I needed anything. I said no. But my heart felt heavier. Still, I told myself not to overthink, not to turn shadows into storms. I had always believed that trust was not only given, but chosen. So I chose it again and again, even when the little signs gathered like quiet clouds on the edge of a clear sky. The biggest shift came one night when he was late for dinner. I had lit a candle, a small habit I had developed for warmth more than romance. I sat at the table waiting, the food cooling slowly. When he finally walked through the door, his hair was mussed and his shirt rumpled, as if he had been pulled through a day rougher than he expected. I asked if everything was all right. He said he had been in a meeting. But there was a softness in his expression that did not match exhaustion. Something almost peaceful, content in a way that did not belong to me. I asked if he had already eaten. He hesitated too long before saying no. That hesitation wrapped around my heart like a quiet vine. Still, I smiled. He sat. We ate. Our conversation felt normal, but beneath each word lay a new layer. A quiet distance he tried to bridge with easy laughter. He reached for my hand across the table, and I let him hold it. His hands were warm, familiar, but his gaze flickered once more toward his phone lying nearby. It lit up with a notification, the screen glowing for a moment before darkening again. His grip tightened briefly, then loosened. These little things did not shout, they whispered. And whispers are easy to ignore when love has taught you to be patient, to believe the best, to wait for storms to pass rather than assume they are coming. But whispers have weight, and they gather until they become something undeniable. When I woke the next morning and packed his lunch, I felt that weight settling quietly in my chest. I told myself the surprises I planned for him, the kindness I carried, the love I tended, would remind him of the life we shared. That was why I decided to bring him lunch that day. Not because he forgot it, though that was true, but because something inside me needed reassurance, needed to see his world, needed to stand in the space he filled when he left our home. I wanted to feel connected again, even if I did not yet understand what had shifted between us. I wanted to remind both of us of who we were. I did not know that by walking into his office, I was walking toward the truth that had been quietly growing behind me like a second shadow. I held the warm bag close to my chest as I left the house, believing this gesture might sew two fraying edges back together. Instead, it would reveal the tear. The moment I stepped back into that lounge, with the door closing softly behind me, the air shifted as if it understood what was coming long before either of us could say it. He stood there, the man I had built a life with, wearing the face I knew but carrying a truth I had not yet seen fully. His shoulders were drawn in, his breath unsteady, and for the first time I noticed how fear looked on him. I walked farther into the room, the sound of my steps too loud in the quiet. The warmth of the paper bag had already faded, leaving only the faint scent of spices clinging to my fingertips. He watched me as if waiting for a verdict he could not endure. I asked him again, calmly, why his coworkers believed I was no longer his wife. His lips parted, but no words came. He looked away, a man seeking escape in the corners of a room with no doors. I could see the pulse in his neck, beating hard. I could see his fingers trembling slightly. He tried to speak. The words tangled in his throat. Then the woman in the white blouse entered the room without knocking, her eyes widening when she saw me standing there. The shock on her face was too raw to be anything but true. She clutched the file in her arms as if holding something fragile, something she feared would fall apart. I knew then. Before she said anything. Before he admitted anything. I knew. I turned to her slowly. My voice was soft, steady, edged with the kind of calm that holds back a storm. Tell me who you thought I was. Her throat moved as she swallowed. The papers in her hands trembled. We thought you were his former wife. Not just her. We. The whole office. My husband exhaled shakily and pressed his hands against his face. Shame sat on him like a heavy coat. The truth was no longer a suspicion. It stood between us now, fully formed. I asked him again. How long had he been saying he was divorced? He whispered only a little while, but his eyes told me it had been far longer. Lies tend to leave shadows, and his shadows stretched wider than he dared admit. Then I asked the question that burned in my chest. Were you seeing her? The woman in the white blouse shook her head quickly, her voice cracking. I did not know he was married. I would never have stepped into something like that knowingly. Her words sounded honest. Painful, but honest. It was his silence that told me the deeper truth. He had let her care for him. He had let her believe he was free. He had let her lean into a life he pretended to have. He reached toward me then. But I pulled back gently. Not with anger, but with certainty. Tell me everything, I said. So he did. His voice broke as he spoke, the truth spilling out in trembling pieces. He told me how the lie began small, only to impress his coworkers, only to fit in, only to feel like he belonged in a world that demanded more than he felt he could offer. He told me how he let the misunderstanding grow until correcting it felt impossible. He told me how admiration from others had filled places inside him he claimed had grown empty somehow. And then he told me how the woman in white had come to trust his version of himself, the version that did not include me. I listened in silence, though my heart pulsed with pain so sharp it tightened my breath. Betrayal rarely announces itself with noise. It unfolds quietly, piece by piece, until suddenly you are standing inside a truth you never agreed to. When he finished speaking, the room felt colder. The truth hung heavy between us, like fog settling over a place you thought you knew. You built an entire identity without me, I whispered. He tried to reach for me again, desperation in his eyes. I never meant to. I lost control. I needed to impress them. I needed to feel like I was winning at something. At something. Not with someone. I turned my head away, blinking back tears that clung stubbornly to the edges of my vision. He had not chosen another woman over me. He had chosen another life. I studied him, and in that moment I felt something shift inside me. A slow breaking not of love, but of the certainty I once held. Love can survive many things, but it needs truth the way a flame needs oxygen. And somewhere along the way, he had starved the flame. The woman in white lowered her gaze, her voice trembling. I am so sorry. If I had known, I would never have stepped into your shadow. I believed him. We all did. I nodded. Not at her guilt, but at her honesty. She had not betrayed me. She had been living inside his lie just as I had, though for a shorter time. You may go, I said softly. She slipped out of the room quietly, leaving only the two of us in the space where truth finally had the courage to stand tall. I looked at my husband, this man who wore guilt like a second skin now, and asked the question that had been growing like a bloom of sorrow in my chest. Why was it so easy for you to erase me? He broke. His shoulders shook, his voice cracking as he tried to explain the unexplainable. He spoke of fear, of inadequacy, of wanting to be seen as successful, impressive, powerful. He told me he had convinced himself that the lie was temporary, that it would end on its own, that no one was being hurt. But lies do not disappear. They grow. They attach themselves to everything you do, everything you say, every step you take. His grew into a second life. A life where my face did not appear in photos, where my name was not spoken, where my ring meant nothing, where my love did not exist. And standing there in that quiet lounge, with the truth finally bare between us, I realized something painful and simple. He had not chosen another woman. He had chosen a version of himself that did not need me. That was the deepest betrayal of all. For a long moment after the truth settled between us, neither of us moved. The room felt smaller, as if the walls had leaned in to listen. My husband stood there with his shoulders hunched and his hands shaking, waiting for my anger to rise like a storm. But what surprised even me was the calm that wrapped around me instead. Pain does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it walks quietly beside you, steadying your steps when you expect to fall. I drew in a slow breath, grounding myself in the faint scent of the cooling lunch I had brought. Then, I lifted my eyes to meet his. He looked at me the way a child looks at a home he has accidentally burned down, wanting desperately to fix what the flames have already touched. "What now?" he whispered. The question felt heavy, intentional. But questions like that cannot be answered quickly. So I said nothing at first. I turned toward the window, my fingers brushing over the fabric of my dress, in slow motions, meant to anchor me. Outside, the office courtyard was alive with movement, people walking to meetings, sipping coffee, talking in low voices. It was strange seeing normal life continue while my own tilted out of balance. I needed air. I told him to wait, and I stepped into the hallway where the space felt wider. The air smelled faintly of printer ink and lavender cleaning spray, and the hum of distant conversations drifted around me. I walked slowly toward a small seating area near a window overlooking the city. My heart felt heavy but clear. I needed to understand how deeply this lie had grown. I needed to see the shape of the story he had written without me. And I needed answers. A moment later, he emerged from the lounge, cautious, as if each step toward me might break something fragile. He stopped a few paces away, giving me space. His voice was rough when he spoke. "Tell me what you want me to do." I did not look at him right away. My gaze rested on the clouds drifting lazily across the sky outside the window. I let silence sit between us for a moment before answering. "I want the truth." His breath unsteady. "You have it." "Not all of it," I said. "The truth is not just what happened. It is why it happened, and what you plan to do next." He swallowed hard, his throat tightening. I was going to end it. All of it. The lie, the pretending, everything. "Were you going to end it before or after she found out you still had a wife?" I asked quietly. His silence confirmed the answer. "After." I turned to face him fully. His eyes were red, his breath shallow, his fingers wrapped tightly around each other as if holding on to something slipping away. "Tell me the whole story," I said. So he did. He spoke in halting sentences, trying to explain the choices he had stitched together one by one. He talked about the pressure at work, the weight of expectations, the fear of looking weak among people who seemed to thrive on being untethered. He admitted he had let admiration from others become a drug he depended on. I listened, my face still, my heart aching with each word. He told me how the woman in white had become someone he confided in, without meaning to, how he let her kindness pull him deeper into the lie, even though he never intended to replace me. I asked him why he did not come to me, why he did not tell me he felt lost, why he let an entire office believe I had walked out of his life. He looked at the floor. "Because I did not want you to see me failing." Those words pierced deeper than I expected. He continued, voice trembling. "You always believed in me. You always saw the best in me. I could not bear the thought of disappointing you. It felt easier to be the strong one here. Even if it meant pretending I was alone." I let that sink in. Pain has layers, and this one sat heavy at the bottom. "So you erased me to protect your pride," I said softly. He lifted his head, eyes wide with regret. "I know how it sounds. I know it is wrong. I know I hurt you." I nodded slowly. "And you hurt yourself too." He blinked at that, confusion spreading across his face. He had not expected those words. But they were true. A lie that large always wounds the one who carries it. I drew in a slow breath and stepped closer, only enough to let my voice reach him clearly. I am not here to scream. I am not here to break you. But you cannot ask me to understand what you kept from me, while expecting me to heal instantly from what you revealed. He stared at me, eyes wet, voice nearly a whisper. What do you want me to do? I felt something steady rise inside me then. Not anger, not vengeance. Clarity. First, I want you to face what you built, I said. Not hide it, not soften it. Face it. My husband swallowed hard. Face it how? I gestured toward the hallway. The people you spend your days with believe a version of you that is not true. You let them believe I was gone. You let them build a story around you that erased me. If you want to repair anything between us, the first step is honesty. He took a step back, startled. You want me to tell them? Yes. All of them. He looked at me as if I had asked him to walk into fire. I could see the fear in his eyes, the fear of losing respect, of losing the image he had crafted, of facing the consequences of the life he had built on half-truths. But this time, I did not soften. Honesty with me is only half of it, I said. The rest is admitting the lie out loud to the place where it grew. He sank into a nearby chair, burying his face in his hands. And what about us? The question trembled through the air. I walked toward him slowly, stopping at a gentle distance. Us cannot begin again until the truth stands alone. He lifted his head, tears sliding across his cheeks, his voice cracking open. And what if I lose my job? What if everything falls apart? I met his gaze with a calm I did not know I had. Then you finally face what you chose. He bowed his head like a man who had reached the edge of something and could not step back. I turned away, letting him sit in the truth of his own making. I needed to gather my thoughts, to breathe, to let my heart catch up with the clarity settling inside me. I walked toward the far end of the hallway, my steps steady. And with each step, I felt something shift in me. Not breaking, not collapsing, becoming. When I turned back toward him, he was still seated, his hands covering his face, elbows resting on his knees. The quiet seemed to press against his shoulders, pushing him deeper into the weight of his choices. For a moment I watched him, the man I had once believed held no secrets from me, the man who now sat trembling beneath the truth he had created. I stepped toward him slowly, my voice steady. It is time. He looked up, eyes red, breath unsteady. Time for what? Time to tell the truth. He shook his head, fear flickering across his face like a shadow waving in candlelight. Not here. Not now. Please. Let me talk to you first. Let me explain more. Let me fix this privately. Privately was how the lie was born. Publicly was how it needed to end. I stood tall, my voice low but unwavering. You hid the truth in this place. So this place deserves honesty. He swallowed hard, his throat tightening as if each word he tried to speak trapped itself halfway. What if they look at me differently? What if they think I am weak? What if this ruins everything? I held his gaze, my expression gentle but firm. A life built on lies has already ruined what matters. Now it is time to rebuild on honesty, whether it is comfortable or not. He stood slowly, his legs unsteady beneath him. His expression was a mixture of dread and resignation. I placed a hand on the side of the door and pushed it open, letting the bright hallway light spill into the quiet room. Come, I said softly. He followed me, though his steps faltered. As we moved down the hallway, the hum of the office grew louder. Conversations, keyboards, distant laughter, normal life, and into that normalcy, we walked like two people stepping into a storm neither of us had the power to stop. The receptionist noticed us first. Her eyes widened. She straightened in her seat, hands hovering above the keyboard. Behind her, two coworkers paused mid-conversation, watching as we approached. One of them gently nudged another, whispering something under her breath. My husband looked around, his breath coming too fast. I could see the panic rising in his chest. I stepped closer, giving him quiet strength with my presence. Though my heart raced too, he spoke before I could. His voice cracked on the first word. I need to say something. The room silenced in ripples. Heads lifted. Chairs rolled back. People turned slightly, pretending to continue working while listening with every part of themselves. He tried again, louder this time. I need to clear something up. The woman in the white blouse appeared near the hallway's end. Her eyes found mine, soft with understanding. She stepped forward a little, just enough to show support without inserting herself into the moment. My husband took a deep breath, and I saw his chest shake with fear. But I also saw something else, a small spark of responsibility. The first flicker of a man willing to face the truth. He spoke slowly. For a long time, I let you all believe something that was not true. I let you believe I was divorced. I let you think I was starting over, that I had no one waiting for me at home. Murmurs rose gently through the office, like wind brushing across tall grass. He continued, voice unsteady. None of that was true. I am married. I have been married the whole time. And my wife. He gestured toward me with trembling fingers. She is here, and she deserves better than the lies I let grow in this place. A hush settled across the room. Not shock. Recognition. Small looks passed between coworkers. Not cruel, but disappointed. People who had believed him now felt the weight of the truth inside their own understanding. One man near the coffee station crossed his arms slowly, his mouth tightening. Another woman who had often invited my husband to group outings lowered her gaze, as if replaying every moment she had unknowingly supported the lie. Even the receptionist, whose voice had first given me the truth, bowed her head with quiet remorse. The woman in white stepped forward gently, her voice soft. He told us a story that was not real. I believed him. We all did. I am sorry for my part in this. I nodded at her, acknowledging her courage. My husband looked at me then, the expression on his face hollowed by regret. He turned back to the group. I hurt my wife by pretending she did not exist here. I hurt her by wanting to look like someone I was not. And I hurt all of you by letting you believe I was someone else. Silence grew deep, like an ocean that pulled every person into its quiet. Then his supervisor approached. A tall man with tired eyes. He looked my husband up and down, taking in everything: the guilt, the confession, the trembling hands. When he spoke, his voice was calm but firm. We will discuss this in my office. There are consequences when integrity at work is compromised. The words were not cruel. They were the truth given shape. My husband nodded slowly. Yes, I understand. His shoulders lowered, just slightly, as if accepting what he could no longer hide behind excuses or fear. He looked smaller somehow, but not broken, just stripped bare of the image he had been clinging to. The supervisor turned to me then. His voice softened respectfully. Thank you for coming forward with grace. This could have been handled very differently. I bowed my head slightly. I did not come to embarrass him, only to bring truth back into the room where it had been lost. He nodded, understanding, then walked away. Around us, the office slowly returned to motion. Quietly, thoughtfully. A few coworkers glanced at me with soft sympathy. Others looked at my husband with the sober understanding that respect, once cracked, takes time to mend. The woman in white approached me. Her eyes were full of apology, though she knew her role was an unknowing one. I am sorry, she said again. I touched her arm gently. You were living in his lie the same way I was. You are not my enemy. Her eyes softened with relief. My husband stood a few feet away, his head bowed, his hands clasped in front of him. I saw the shame heavy on him. The consequences were no longer private. He had to face them with every witness around him, and there is a particular weight in being seen clearly after hiding for so long. I stepped closer. He flinched at first, but then lifted his eyes. I spoke softly, but with strength. What comes next will not be easy. Not for you. Not for us. But honesty begins here. With light. He nodded, swallowing hard. We stood there together in that bright hallway, surrounded by people who now knew the truth. Not a perfect ending. Not a triumphant victory. A reckoning. The kind that opens the door to whatever healing may come next. When we left the office together, the sunlight outside felt different on my skin. Not warmer. Not gentler. Just clearer somehow, as if the world itself had shifted a little to make room for the truth we had finally spoken aloud. My husband walked beside me in silence. His shoulders bowed under the weight of everything that had unfolded. He did not reach for my hand. He did not try to speak. He simply walked, steady but fragile, like a man learning how to breathe again after holding his breath for far too long. We reached the car, and he opened my door quietly. His hands trembled as he did. When he sat in the driver's seat, he did not start the engine. He simply stared ahead, eyes unfocused, his breath uneven. I watched him for a moment, studying the lines in his face, the sorrow pooling in the corners of his expression. He looked older somehow, or maybe he simply looked real in a way he had not allowed himself to be before. After a long moment, I spoke. You do not need to say anything right now. Not until your words come from clarity instead of fear. His chin trembled. I am afraid they all hate me now. They do not hate you, I said softly. But they see you. That is what honesty does. It brings light to places you once kept dark. He closed his eyes, a tear sliding down his cheek. I disappointed everyone today. I turned my gaze toward the horizon, watching the slow drift of clouds across the sky. Sometimes disappointment is the first step toward rebuilding something stronger. But it begins with truth, not image. He swallowed hard. And us? That question lingered between us, trembling like a fragile thing caught in a calm breeze. I faced him fully, my voice steady. Healing is not a single moment. It is a path. And today is simply the first step. We can move forward only if both of us are willing to walk through the truth together. His eyes filled with hope and fear all at once. I want to. More than anything, I want to be the man you believed I was. I studied him for a long moment. Then be honest with me. And be honest with yourself. That is where it begins. He nodded, wiping his face with the back of his hand like a boy who did not want to cry in front of someone he loves. I will go to counseling. I will take accountability at work. I will do whatever it takes. I breathed slowly, letting the weight in my chest settle into something softer. He was speaking from sincerity, but sincerity is only the beginning. Actions shape the rest. At home, the air felt strangely still. The familiar scent of basil near the window drifted faintly through the room. It felt like stepping into a place I knew, yet carrying a heart that had changed. He sank onto the couch as if his body no longer knew how to hold itself up. I placed the lunch bag on the table, the food long cooled, the gesture still warm in its intention, if not its temperature. He watched it with sorrow in his eyes. You brought this for me with so much love. And I treated you like an inconvenience in the world I created here. I sat across from him, my hands folded gently in my lap. Love does not erase consequence, and consequence does not erase love. Both can exist at the same time. He lowered his head. I miss the man I used to be. Then find him again, I said quietly. Not the image you created. The real one. The one I married. His voice cracked. I do not know where to start. With truth, I answered. With humility. With work. This will not be healed in a day. Not in a handful of days. Trust is not rebuilt by promises. It is rebuilt by consistency. He nodded slowly, letting each word settle like stepping stones laid in front of him. I will prove to you that I can be better. I will not hide from the consequences. For the first time since the truth unraveled, I felt my heart loosen just a little. Not because the pain was gone, but because I could see him facing the truth instead of running from it. That was the beginning of healing. Not forgiveness. Not restoration. Just the very first breath of something new. In the days that followed, the house held a tender quiet. Not tense. Not cold. Just thoughtful. He woke earlier, sat at the table with his coffee, and spoke honestly about his fears, his insecurities, his desire to be a man of integrity again. He apologized without rushing my response. He listened without defending himself. He took responsibility without dramatizing his guilt. He scheduled counseling sessions. He met with his manager. He faced the conversations he had long avoided. Each day he returned home with a new layer of humility, a quiet steadiness forming around him, like the slow healing of a wound that had stopped bleeding. One morning, I found him standing in the kitchen, staring at the basil plant. His fingers brushed gently across the leaves, and he whispered softly, like a confession carried by breath. I forgot how much life grows when you take care of it. I stood in the doorway, unseen for a moment, watching him. There was sincerity in his voice, a softness I had not heard in a long time. I stepped forward, my presence warming the room. Healing is not forgetting, I said gently. It is remembering differently. It is choosing again. Choosing yourself. Choosing honesty. Choosing us. If we move forward together. He turned to me, tears shining. I choose you. Every day. If you will let me. I held his gaze, feeling the truth of my own heart rise like a tide. I am choosing myself right now. And if choosing myself leads me back to you, then that will be our new beginning. Not our old one. His breath shook with relief. We stood there in the quiet morning light. Two people learning how to hold a truth that had hurt, but was now becoming the foundation for whatever might come next. Not a perfect ending. Not a closed door. A beginning shaped by honesty, not illusion. As the days settled into a gentler rhythm, I found myself waking each morning with a different kind of quiet inside me. Not the quiet of confusion or hurt, but the quiet that comes when a storm has passed and the air feels washed clean. Even if the ground is still damp, healing did not arrive in grand gestures. It arrived in small moments. Moments where I chose to breathe instead of fear. Moments where he chose honesty instead of pride. Moments where the truth sat between us, not as a weapon, but as a teacher. There were evenings when he would sit beside me on the couch, not touching, just sharing space. His presence felt humbler now. Gentler. Like he understood that love is not something to assume but something to tend. I could see him learning how to hold truths he once pushed away. I could see him trying to become a man who deserved the life he had almost lost. And I was learning too. Learning that strength does not always look like standing tall. Sometimes it looks like being still enough to hear your own heart. Sometimes it looks like choosing yourself even while choosing patience. Sometimes it looks like allowing love to return in its own time, if it chooses to return at all. One morning, as I brewed coffee and watched the steam curl upward, I felt a soft sense of peace settle in my chest. Not about the past, not about what he had done, but about myself. The woman who walked into his office carrying a lunch bag full of love had changed. She had walked out carrying something heavier and wiser. She had learned that truth is not something to fear. It is something to honor. It lights the path forward, even when the steps are uncertain. My husband walked into the kitchen, his expression gentle. He paused, watching me with a look that held both gratitude and humility. He no longer rushed to fill silence. He understood that healing grows in the space where pressure used to live. I smiled softly, not promising anything beyond the moment we shared. Sometimes a moment is enough. Later that day, as I sat by the window and looked out at the world moving steadily below, I let myself breathe fully. The pain was still there, but it was no longer sharp. It had softened into something I could carry without breaking. Life does not always hand us the stories we expect. Sometimes it hands us a different chapter entirely, asking us to find meaning in a place we did not choose. But there is always a way through, always a lesson waiting beneath the ache, always a chance to rise steady again. I have learned that love does not protect us from hurt. Love simply gives us the strength to face what is true. And so I offer this story to you, the listener, the witness to my journey, not as a warning, not as a confession, but as a reminder that healing is possible, even when trust has been shaken. That truth, once spoken, can open the door to something new, and that choosing yourself is never the wrong beginning. Now I ask you, from my heart to yours, if you discovered that the person you loved had built a second life without you, would you stay and rebuild? Or would you walk toward a new beginning of your own? Tell me in the comments below. Your voice matters. Your story matters.